Welcome to South Africa. I've just finished my first week here on placement. I've got 3 more to go. I'm going to do some clips every week about how I'm doing and what I'm doing on this placement. So the biggest thing has been the people. The people hosting me, the people I've been hanging out with and spending time with. They've been really welcoming and looking after me, driving me everywhere and sorting out all my things, and I've got such a busy schedule. They've really tried to make the most of my time here. I've been into the Cathedral, which is where the placement is based in Johannesburg, and got to know the building and the area and the things that they do. I've also got to know the city and the country. I've learnt a lot. I've learnt a lot of history, and I've eaten a lot of the food. A big part of travelling anywhere, especially internationally, is getting to know the local cuisine. And my hosts have been very helpful in trying to get me to eat lots of different things like oxtail, a cotta. And yesterday was Sunday and I got to preach twice. I did the same sermon but like a longer version and a shorter version. One for the 8 a.m.
Shalom is eternal peace, forever. Because shalom is part of the covenant with God.
And one for the family day service, which was in the park.
On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. We call them the Great Commandments. But James, in our reading, in his letter, calls the command to love your neighbour as yourself the royal law.
So that was probably the highlight of my first week, and I'll be preaching pretty much every Sunday while I'm here, which is really exciting because basically I'm going to preach as much in South Africa as I did in Durham in my first year. So I'm really excited still to be here. 4 weeks is a long time, but I think it's going to fly by, and I'm really glad I'm here. Hi, so much has happened since my last clip. First of all, I went to the Cradle of Humankind. I saw the bones of our ancestors and learnt about prehistoric Homo not sapiens. We went into some caves where they found the bones, and we went to a great museum where there was like a boat ride and it was like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. A surprising highlight was a sort of family shopping trip that I ended up going on. We went to a mall. I needed to buy a jacket, then we ended up food shopping, and like it was just like really nice to be with a family just doing a normal thing. Then we went to Cathedral, where we were helping a church's project that cooks food once a week for poverty-stricken children. Another highlight was when I helped lead home communions. We spent the whole day going around the township to various people's houses, lots of old people, sick people. And there was a hilarious time when one of the women made some Zulu items and they were dressing me up in them. A big thing that we did was a weekend trip away to Botswana, which is only, a few hours drive across the border from Johannesburg. We turned it into a bit of a road trip. There were 4 of us, and actually the driving in the car was quite a lot of fun. It was a lot hotter. We went up at least 10 degrees when we went into Botswana. While we were there on the Saturday, they had an international food fair. I had to judge a children's dance competition. And church was amazing on the Sunday. They had some Americans from North Carolina visiting. So we had a bishop in the sanctuary, and I was there. And so was one of our part of the party, who's a deacon. And I didn't do a lot. I carried a few things, and I obviously processed. But I also did the prayer for the altar party before we started, which was a lovely privilege to do. And at the moment I am in Grahamstown, which is where the Southern African Anglican Theological Training Institute is, the College of the Transfiguration. So I'm here for a week. I'm going to some classes. I've gone down from Botswana. It was 37, it's now 13. Like my temperature is seriously swinging, and I'll tell you all about that at the end of this week.
I'm sorry to say that I didn't actually record any other clips while I was in South Africa, and as I explain what I was doing in the last couple of weeks, you'll see why I was quite busy. So my few days at the college were quite wonderful, apart from the start of each day when we had to be in meditation at 6:45. A lot of my time was spent in classes, things like biblical studies and stuff that I was quite used to, with some very different perspectives and some very interesting conversations. Me and the dean also did some sightseeing in the town. I went to a lovely little cathedral and found this fantastic rainbow-winged St. Michael. And some of the time I spent in the library. As I was at a theological college and I had a sermon coming up, I thought, why not go into the commentary section? We left the college and went for an extra night in Port Elizabeth, staying with the dean's aunt. And they were amazingly hospitable. They lived in the township New Brighton. And they didn't have a lot. They made sure that we were very comfortable. They were so lovely and just immediately welcoming, which is something I experienced my entire time there. Once we returned to Joburg, I immediately was picked up by the rector of the parish church in Alexandra, which is the poorest township in the Joburg area. I stayed with one of the congregation members in Alexandra, and my first evening there, they had people over, we had a braai, and had a really great conversation with the rector, which meant I could add a few very context-based things to my sermon. The sermon went well in the morning. You'll recognise that talking about the righteous and the unrighteous, the wicked, It's common in the Psalms. And the Sunday afternoon I spent with these two cracking old guys who took us round the township, giving us a little tour and telling us things from the history that, they were there for. It was an incredible experience to hear it, a living history. I returned that evening to the deanery to meet the St Martin's choir. So followers of this blog will know that I used to work at St Martin in the Fields, and it was a really cool thing that my trip coincided with their choir trip. And on their arrival, the dean threw this big party at their house. The next day was Heritage Day, which is a really cool thing in South Africa, which is a public holiday where people can celebrate their heritage. We went to some celebrations and I dressed up in the Xhosa things that I'd been given. Later in the week, I went to see a guy called Father Moses, and he taught me through the very interesting Darson and national church things around ministry training. And it's been really interesting for me to reflect on the differences of things I've experienced there at college and talking to Moses about their education and how we do things in England. I also went on some parish visits with my friend who was an ordinand, Mbakazeli. We went to a couple of churches and I got to chat with first the vicar at one, and then the youth pastor at the other. There was a really nice evening where I went to the concert that St Martin's were involved with at one of the schools nearby. And then there was the jazz evening, which was an amazing... I didn't realise how much jazz there was in South Africa and how much of a genre that is. And so me and the choir went out to a bar and we're listening to jazz and having food. And it was just a really nice way to experience that part of that culture. On my last Sunday, I went to a place called De Kloof, which is the sending parish of the Dean. It was a really lovely place and my sermon went really well. I did a sort of audience participation thing, which, actually came off very well. And they were doing their sort of church-based heritage celebrations, so we were invited to join them for their lunch. But the big sort of last thing that I did was another concert, including St Martin's, which was launching the Dean's bursary fund. And it was amazing. We had four great choirs and a real mix of music from different choral traditions, and it was a really nice last thing to do. My last day before I flew off, I did a bit of shopping and got some things like some jazzies from my dad. And I also visited the Darson office, which was an unexpected joy, actually. They were some really great people. And I got some unexpected resources. I got a copy of the Anglican prayer book that I'd been using while I was there. And I got some music, multilingual music, because the music there was such a big part of church, and I really wanted to bring some of that back to England. Now, on my video notes for this, I've put summary, and I have no idea how to summarise 4 weeks in South Africa. It was, as you can tell, a bit of a whirlwind, but I did so much and I met so many people and I learned so much and I encountered God in so many places. I had some of my own assumptions challenged, but really it comes back to what I said at the beginning. It boiled down to the people. They were just incredible, and I've got some really great friends that I will absolutely be visiting again and hopefully be able to host if they come over here. If I absolutely had to choose a highlight, I think it would be preaching. And the fact that my eyes were open to the wonder that is in God, that a young, white, middle-class English girl going into that context, I didn't think I'd have anything to say to them. But you give it to God and you pray about it, and God has something to say through you. Sawubona! Yeah. So overall, I'm still reflecting and I'm still processing the whole thing, even though it's weeks since I got back. And it was really tiring, and as you can tell for the last few vlogs, my summer was absolutely mental, but I don't regret a second of it. It was all absolutely worth it. There were highs, there were lows. Not everything was perfect, some things went wrong, but at least in South Africa, there's quite a good attitude towards what is possible and what isn't. So to all my friends in South Africa watching this, thank you so much for absolutely everything. And if anyone is contemplating going to South Africa for any reason, whether it's for a holiday or whether it is for a placement, I absolutely recommend it. And for any ordinands watching, I hope you've been inspired to look further afield for the places that God might send you. Oh, and one last thing that I forgot to tell you. I got given a Xhosa name, which they chose because I can't pronounce it, but it means flower. This is how to spell it. And the closest I can get to saying it is Noshatambo, which everyone is now probably laughing at me as they watch this. And if there's one thing I would not have expected going to South Africa was that sort of level of adoption, which really shows you what kind of people they are and how completely open and welcoming they were to me. And I will be forever grateful.